Steve Borthwick has picked his side to take on the Wallabies this weekend at Twickenham, folks. It is a pretty conservative selection in terms of not making wholesale changes. It's the same starting 15, barring a jersey swap for the midfielders. The bench is a little bit different, going for a 5-3 this week instead of the 6-2 we saw last week. Cowan-Dickie comes in as the backup hooker. There's no spot for Ben Curry. But we'll go through the squad. You guys can let us know your thoughts. And yeah, it's one that cops a lot of flack. I feel like Borthwick, maybe it's just England coaches generally. Maybe it's just rugby fans generally, but Borthwick seems to cop a lot of flack for his selections being particularly conservative. And he's, as I said, he's not made wholesale changes after the All Blacks loss. And I kind of get it. It wasn't like a big loss. This was a very winnable game last week for England. So I don't feel like you need to change the entire side as a kind of knee-jerk reaction to that loss. George Ford is one guy that is copping a lot of flack after last week's result. Marcus Smith was playing really well. George Ford comes on, misses a drop goal, misses a penalty, misses a tackle, which leads to a try. Sure, it is far from George Ford's finest hour, but he's been there and done that as that kind of clutch guy to win games for England in the past. He was just lacking a bit of game time, I feel, and it may be that last week's selection to rush him back into the side after, not initially making the squad. He was one of the late inclusions into the squad. Maybe that's where the error comes in. Maybe last week should have been Finn Smith, but George Ford, for better or worse, has had a few extra minutes of game time under his belt. So his inclusion is not entirely surprising. If you drop him, maybe that sends a kind of worse message psychologically to the man that you're kind of blaming him for the loss. So he remains there. And the starting 15, as I mentioned, is kind of the same. The front rowers that started the game, Genge and Stuart, are certainly at scrum time, and Jamie George as well. But particularly the props, you feel like did really well against the All Blacks starting forward pack. The replacements got a little bit of a torrid time, like both Cole and Baxter conceded penalties from the bench. Like when you consider England only conceded 7 penalties throughout the entire game, the fact that both the replacement props come on with not that much time and both concede a penalty at scrum time is a little bit concerning. But to be fair, if you guys haven't watched the Rugby Championship, the Australians have got the exact same issue. Their starting props of Bell and Tupou are phenomenal, and then there's a big drop-off, particularly when Slipper and Itoje come on. So that will be a particularly interesting battle in itself. Which of the kind of replacement props are able to stand up better, because both sides' starting props have done kind of pretty well. George Martin, not a lot getting talked about him after last week, but he was England's top forward for tackles. He was their top guy for lineout, so certainly a big positive contribution. And Chandler, Cunningham-South, getting a whole lot of credit for those big hits he put in, a couple of big dominant tackles as well. He was also one of England's leading tacklers in that really phenomenal defensive shift. Maybe like to see a little bit more on him with the ball carry. He was 3 carries, 2 meters last week, which is not that flash. Ben Earl shoulders a lot of that responsibility for the England forwards on attack. Like, he had 17 carries, 64 metres, far and away England's biggest attacking weapon in terms of their forwards and in terms of their ball and hand stuff. Like, barring his kind of one mind-numbing moment where he went in for a no-arms tackle, which was pretty costly, his contributions are well into the positive. But yeah, it'd be nice to see a little bit more from some of the other guys around him. And then, Spencer and Smith, I thought were a pretty good 19 combo. Smith was one of the guys who was certainly looking to unlock the New Zealand defence. It was a big part that try they got from the intercept. And then Spencer with his box kicking, I felt like pinged the All Blacks guys back pretty well. The midfield is an interesting one because they've swapped jerseys for this game. So Lawrence is kind of back to the familiar 13 jersey where he's been playing his rugby at club. But then Slade, I don't think, has started a game at 12 since 2022 against Scotland. So it is an interesting call. Lawrence was certainly a guy defensively strong last week, but neither of them did much ball in hand in terms of just taking the ball up to the line. I think Lawrence had 2 carries and Slade had 3. Not a lot going on with the midfield in terms of that just direct running lines, which is surprising seeing as how well we know Lawrence can do that kind of thing. Like Geordie Barrett, for comparison, had 11 carries just alone for the All Blacks. So yeah, the English midfield with 4 kicks, they had only 1 fewer kick than they did carries, which is just a bizarre it's not wrong by any means. You can play the game any way you want. It's just bizarre to see the midfield kind of kept relatively quiet, and that Freeman, in terms of the wings, didn't have as much ball going his way as Feyi-Waboso did. Feyi-Waboso was quite incredible. He had 75 metres, beat 6 defenders. He did concede 3 penalties, including a soft one, which, offsided a kick. Concedes a bit of soft territory to the All Blacks, which they ended up converting into points. So that's one area to improve. But yeah, that guy is one of the first names off the team sheet for this England side. The bench does have some changes. Cowan-Dickie's back. I'm not sure if Theo Dam was ruled out. They didn't mention it, but remember he did take that late high shot from Anton Leonard-Brown, which saw him go off. So potentially he's going through the HIA process, but as I said, they haven't mentioned it as yet. But in terms of a hooker who's going to be able to help bolster the set piece, you feel like Cowan-Dickie is a good call. Haven't seen him play for England for a couple of years, so good to see him back. Isiekwe is still there. Dombrandt's another one who's copping a bit of stick. Why is Dombrandt there? In his defence, he played like fewer minutes than Ben Curry last week and had more carries and had more tackles, but he also only had 2 carries for 2 metres, which, like, when I've seen Dombrandt play for Quins, it's a bizarre one because he seems like an absolute menace, his ability to get forward in the tackle, get crazy offloads going, but he doesn't seem to have it yet anyway at international level. The fact that you got a guy like Jack Willis not selected and a guy like Sam Underhill not in the 23 does make it a bit of a head scratcher, but as I said, he did get through a fair bit of tackling, so credit to him for that. 3 backs on the bench, as I mentioned, Randall, Ford, and Sleightholme. So I think you'd be pretty pleased for Ollie Sleightholme. Certainly a proper big attacking winger. Hopefully he gets a bit of decent game time from the bench. But yeah, I think the squad, albeit relatively similar to the one that played last week, we'll go into this one pretty confident against the Wallabies. It'll be the Wallabies' first game of their tour up north, so we'll have to see what kind of form they're in. Remembering in the Rugby Championship, they finished with just the one solitary win over the Pumas, so not coming into this one exactly red hot, and England does have a pretty good record over Australia in recent years. If you want some England Rugby gear, like this very jacket or this very hat that I'm wearing, check out England Rugby Store down in the description there, an affiliate of the channel. Get yourself some rugby gear and tell them 2 cents sent you with that link. But yes, you guys, let us know your thoughts on England's squad. Who would you have in if you were in Steve Borthwick's shoes? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.